Hi there, and in this video, we will be covering how to convert your existing Redux application into a Redux Toolkit based one, which is more simpler and easier to work with, and it's official, coming straight from the Redux team. So let's get started by just clicking on Get Started. And right from the get go, the Redux Toolkit library already explains the common concerns about Redux. The store is too complicated to configure, you have a lot of packages, requires too much boilerplate code. That being said, when we convert our sample application in this video to Redux Toolkit, sure it would help you out greatly knowing that a lot of codes can be compressed into a single one that's easier to work with, requires fewer lines of code, and overall makes your dev life much more easier. So let's get started. But first, this article was the basis for read this video, which is about Redux Toolkit. So in this video, I will be continuing where we left off with my blog. So this blog explains Redux using the Redux core. So I go over what's Redux and the important parts, which is the store, the reducer, the actions, action creators, and go over the connect function and the dispatch function. So this article focuses on learning the Redux core, but this time we'll be continuing where that article left off and just build a Redux toolkit based one and not changing anything more about the app. So the functionality will stay as is, but it will still be the same app but different implementation. One for Redux Core, from Redux Core to Redux Toolkit. So I already have that prepared here. Let me just close this. Yes, so this is the simple to do app which can add tasks like this one. So it comes with a number, an ID number, and the task. Obviously, you could add more, but for the sake of this video, it's simplified to that extent. Another. And you can choose whatever you want to delete, the tasks, that is. Okay, so if we're going to convert this one, where will we start? So we'll start by adding our React Redux. Redux Toolkit. Redux JS Toolkit 1.5. So for the sake of this video, we'll be doing it in Expo Snack because it's more convenient to demonstrate it in. And you also have the opportunity to grab a copy straight from Snack Expo by just simply clicking on the link which I will post down below in the description for your convenience. So you can have your own copy and try to practice this out on your own during the video and also after. So after you've successfully typed this one out, it should be ready to go. Don't bear in mind that this is an existing Redux application. This was spaced from the documentation. So let's see what we have to remove. So first off, you have to remove this one because what will replace it is the configure store from Redux.js toolkit. So that's what will replace this one. And you have to specify the reducer here. So this uh, introduces a new function called configure store. And what configure store does is that it performs additional configurations that you would need to implement manually if you're just using the Redux core. So one of the additions is Redux Tunk. So out of the box, it's already supported for you, and as well as other things that would most likely need to be manually implemented if you were just using the Redux core. So think of it as uh, something that builds upon Create Store with more additional setup and configuration straight out of the box. And you only need to specify for this video, just to keep things simple, you only need to specify the reducer as a key. So the key is the reducer, and you just have to specify your root reducer. If you need some review over the Redux basics, I would definitely advise you to read on my blog at dev.to, which is talking about all of that basics about Redux in a practical example, which is this one. So after that, we don't really need to change anything just yet, so we'll keep this as is, but we'll remove the package.json and we'll move on to the Redux and see what we should do. So we have add to do here, we have delete to do in the actions, and seeing this as constants, we find that in action types we actually specify this one. So this is one of the problems that makes our development time more, shall we say, longer and more tedious because there's a lot to do. And then after the actions and action types, you still need to write your reducer, write your specific reducer here in its own separate file to keep things clean. So what will replace the majority of this one? We can already delete those files. So that will cause some errors, but it's better to delete them now so that we can actually get a feel of how much we can reduce. Okay, so we can also delete the to-dos reducer. So we deleted 3 files, remember? And what will we do with reducers? Index.js. We just need to place it outside. We no longer need to have this one. We can also delete this reducers folder. And we'll just rename it for convenience, reducers.js. Okay. So now we're short on the to-dos reducer function. What will replace it and the actions that we just removed? What will replace it is what we call a slice. So I'll call it to do slice.js. So I omitted the s just because it makes me feel uncomfortable when I say to do slice. Okay, so we need to import create slice from the Redux JS toolkit, and we need to specify our export later. For now, we declare the to do slice, which is going to use the create slice, and you can already see that we're going to fill it up with keys just like we did in the configure store. So we just have to give it a name first. So to do's. Next, the initial state. So the initial state is pretty much what your initial state in your Redux core looks like. So we previously had a to-dos list, which is an array. If you'll just compare and contrast this when you look at it for yourself, you can find that the to-dos list was already in the original file. I'll just put it in another place, which is inside the create slice function. And then you finally go to the reducers. So in the reducers, it's a set of functions. So we specify those functions in keys. So add to do will be a function that will obviously return some piece of state. But we don't need to do that anymore. All we need to do is accept the state and the action, because of course it's still Redux. It still passes the state and the action with the action type and action payload, just automated. So what we need to do is just change the state that to do's list and equate it, which is a different feel for what we did in Redux. Was just copy over everything using spread the state, the original state, then spread again depending on what we need. But for this one, we can directly assign the variables, the state variables, like we do in a regular JavaScript program. So we can change it, but we still need to spread the existing one. And then we need to add, what do we need to add? The payload. So the payload will be task. This is a task. And we also needed an ID. So we have to specify an ID. So let's just work with this now and just label it 0, and we'll worry about it later. So we also have delete to do, but I guess we have to do it now. State, action, just like the previous add to do. All we need to do is state that to do's list, that filter, because that filter will automatically return you a new array with your filtered items. So let's just name it item.id is not equal to action.payload. So the difference between these two is action.payload that as an object which contains a task key, and this action.payload just contains a number which is used to make it delete. And then all we have to do after this one is export the two, add to do and delete to do, as create to do slice dot actions. Okay, so that's automatically done for us. Yep, that's done for us. You can destructure and export these two as actions, because Redux Toolkit already provides us with this helper. And then lastly, all we need to do is export default, the to do slice reducers. Okay, so we have successfully exported this one. We exported the actions, we exported the reducers, and then what's left is just to change the name of the to-do's reducer and make it point it to the to-do slice instead. Because remember, we're exporting the reducers, we're passing the reducers here in combine reducers. And then all we need to do is remember that we already changed this one, and just remove the index, and it will be okay. So now let's go to the main screen, which is the to-do app. In the to-do app, the import is wrong because we've already placed that in the to-do slice. And it's mentioning something about state that to-dos is undefined. So let's look at this one and see where we might have thrown an error. To do's. To do's. Well, it's the same. To do's, to do's. Let's see. How about we go to the screen and just remove remove this one by commenting it out. So we open up console log and we see that state of to-dos is undefined. So let's take a step further and look that it has no variables. And I made a typo, which is to-do slice that reducer. I had my doubts, but I guess just forgot. But that's one way to debug it. All you need to do is specify the reducer, even though it says reducers in this one. Okay, so you have successfully figured it out, debugged it. It was just a typo. So I can just undo everything, and it should work as well as we did expect. But the ID is wrong because we need to go back there and add some way of support for it. We don't have a database, but we can let an ID here, and we can choose to implement it like this one, and we have another task app again. So this is your Redux Toolkit implementation. If you want the original, I'll post it in the description below as well as the completed one. So this will be the completed version. This will be the starting point since I won't save my progress here. And this is the actual uh, application from my blog earlier. Let me just convert it to 40. So I made it to version 40. Let's just save it. Yeah, so hard to imagine that from this one, where we have store, the action types, the reducers, the actions, all of it was just reduced to a simple slice, which is okay because we don't really need to tire ourselves out with implementing this constants and worrying about the action creators and such. The Redux Toolkit handles most of the legwork for us, which is cool. You see how we reduce this to just a slice, and everything is intuitive. So if you want more Redux Toolkit content, please feel free to like this video and leave a comment down below. And stay tuned for more React Native videos coming soon. So, goodbye. Bye for now.